managing partner in Chicago, Illinois. John began his career in 1980 as an advisor in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He later served as the district agent for 8 years in Edina, Minnesota, building his organization from the position of 157 to the third in the country. John was a highly productive agent and is a lifetime qualifier for the $1 Million Round Table. His management philosophy is inspiring, and his practices are easily transferable to your organization.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I do feel, though, that I should warn you that I do have a speech impediment, which has been very helpful to me in my life. Actually, the whole top of the table deal, I had a special advantage. See, what I would do is I would tell people, if you didn't buy this policy, I was going to read it to you. I'd really like to break my time down today into 3 areas. Who am I? Where's my organization, or where was my organization 2 years ago? And where does our organization need to go and grow in the future to take advantage of the incredible opportunity and also the incredible responsibility? I was born on April 14th, 1956. That's exactly 9 months, or more aptly described, 40 weeks, after my mother and father attended a Northwestern Mutual annual meeting garden party in Milwaukee. Yep, everybody knows what 40 weeks means. Jerry and Catherine McTigg, my father was a district agent in northwestern Iowa for the Northwestern Mutual. It was very humbling, and it's still humbling for me to know today that the roof over my head, the food on my table, my college education, was funded by the sale of life insurance to trying to help the farmers and the business owners in northwestern Iowa, and the overrides my father received for bringing people into this wonderful career in business. Fort Dodge, Iowa was a small town. Matter of fact, I still joke that the town was so small the major industry was jury duty. For those of you who feel like you have market penetration issues, instead of the small town of 26,000, my dad was able to raise and develop 13 roundtable producers in that small community. 25 years ago, a kid with a speech impediment that had 2 sounds he specifically had problems with, L's and I's. And I want you to think of what we sold. I was begging Northwestern Mutual to get into financial planning 25 years ago. Just so I could tell people what I did. My 84-year-old mother to this day receives the Northwestern Mutual newsletter. I specifically left my cell phone in my briefcase because she would call me any minute and say, "How is it going?" Imagine getting a phone call from your 84-year-old mother about 6 months ago saying the following: "I'm really impressed to see your premium account is way up, but your policy count seems to be slipping a bit." You know, this job is high pressure enough, and that seems to be just piling on. You know, I think ownership of our product and our special products has had a special impact on how I've come across to my organization and my prospects. I'm currently the proud owner of $8 million of whole life, $2 million of term to cover the debt from the office build-out, second to die insurance, $25,000 a month disability and disability overhead, long-term care on my wife and myself. Vanessa said, "Buddy, I took you for better or worse, but I did not take you for drooling." I've got $350,000 of 65 life on my children. And the last time I looked, I saw that at 65 I would have approximately $6.5 million of good old-fashioned cash value. Now, you can talk about all the great spots to have money, But can you imagine the financial security that comes from having $6.5 million of cold, hard cash? To be able to spin off $400,000 of income between there and 90 and still leave your children a legacy of $10 million. What a gift. I truly believed at age 35 and single that putting $100,000 into my insurance program was a good idea. I believed that putting 20% of my money into a product that had a phenomenal long-term rate of return, that left a legacy, that grew without the burden of income taxes, was protected from creditors, and was self-completing if I was sick or injured, was the best piece of property I could own. And you know, I still believe it today. In addition to the great accumulation aspects, I was exposed, fortunately and unfortunately early on, to the product, the reason that our product is so important and yet so underestimated. I want you to flash back for a minute to your life in 1978, living in South Minneapolis. Three of your buddies, three of your best friends in the world. You're up on Saturday mornings in your t-shirts and your boxer shorts, sitting around a kitchen table, eating your Frosted Flakes, talking about what happened the night before. Tucker, Juxie, and Kevin, three best friends and myself living together in one god-awful house. We shared the house, the pizza, the paychecks at time, 20 Jimmy Buffett concerts, and the 20 corresponding hangovers that come along with 20 Jimmy Buffett concerts. All eventually got married, started families, moved on, except myself, the Irish by nature are late bloomers. We believe funerals should be celebrated and weddings be postponed. It's a true story. Then I hit a bad stretch. It started with Kevin. Kevin called me up one day. He owned a company in Minneapolis and was doing well, and he called me up and he said, hey, you know what, I'm not going to be able to make my appointment next week. I got a doctor appointment. I got to go in and get this little mole dug off my back. You know, I got that pasty Irish skin, and I spent too much time in the sun as a kid. But we'll schedule it the week after that. So I called him the week after that, and who I talked to wasn't my jovial friend Kevin. It was a person that was physically shaken, nervous. And he shared with me that what had happened is when they went in, they tried to dig and dig and dig and dig, and they found it had gotten into his lymph glands. And what I didn't know is I just thought, you know, it's skin cancer. It's no big deal. Well, he fought a tragic battle for about 2.5 years. And I remember walking into his wake and seeing his wife and 3 beautiful children under 5 years old. And it's always interesting how the conversation kind of stops, and she walks over and she says, John, I know you handled all this stuff. And she said, are we going to be all right? I said, yeah, you'll be all right. 18 months after that, I got a phone call from Steve and said, did you hear about Juxie? I said, no. See, Juxie was the manager of a salt plant. And what they do is they shoot 220 or 250 degree water down to these 36-inch pipes into salt deposits. And they pump the water back up, they let the water evaporate, and what you have left is salt. He was down there with his assistant manager in this 36-inch pipe. And for some reason, they heard the roar of water. And you can't run when you're hunched over at 36 inches. And they scrambled as fast as they could. And Stevie, in an act of heroism, stopped, and as opposed to going up the ladder, grabbed the assistant and shoved him up first. This allowed the assistant to only get 3rd-degree burns from the waist down. Steve, however, was totally immersed. He went through a living hell for about 2.5 days, and died, leaving a beautiful wife and a 2-year-old. And I think everybody handles these types of situations differently. But about 18 months after that, Jim walked into a Walmart, and they could tell by the charge card, took his MasterCard and charged 12 feet of rope. And I don't know what goes through your mind between 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you buy the rope and 1 o'clock at night when you hang yourself. But that was the 3rd or the 4th musketeers that was lost. I did know that the $4.1 million of death benefit that I delivered to 3 families allowed 3 families to maintain their homes, their lives, the college educations for their children, and their dignity. I'm also proud to say, and I think this is important, not one of them brought insurance up. Not one of them wanted to talk about it. What they wanted to talk about at that age was BMWs, hot tubs, and vacations. I think that's natural when you're 30 years old. I think frankly it's unnatural to have conversations about the unthinkable. If I had only talked about what they wanted, I wouldn't have lived up to my responsibility, and the dreams for their families wouldn't have lived on. And I think that's why I am who I am. So in summary, that's my life story. It was a life that was created, nurtured, and grown around the impact of our industry and the impact of this incredible piece of property known as life insurance. So now that you've heard who I am, imagine approximately 2 years ago when you walk into your office and you hear your associates start to say things such as, "John, I'm going to sell them insurance first. In investments first. Then I'll go back and talk to them about that other stuff. John, why do we talk so much about insurance around here? John, people don't always want to talk about insurance. I don't want to be pigeonholed as just as an insurance agent." My reaction was one of anger, disbelief, self-doubt, sadness. I think I was biased, frankly, because of who I am and where I'd come from. But I did realize I had a problem, I had to deal with it, and I had to deal with it in a hurry.